Hey there, Ryan Thompson, and today we will be looking at Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Robin is a prisoner of the Muslims, and they're dealing with some unspeakable agonies, hand chopping, and so forth.
As you wish.
Robin manages to break free, but only because another Muslim is able to help him find a way out. So already within Robin Hood, we have the elevation of the other. And if you look at the original story by Chaucer, it's supposed to be about Robin kind of looking after the home front and his own people. And so, yes.
If you do not, we are all dead men. Should I? For pity. You cannot save those people, Christian, but you can save me.
And he is so grateful that he is going to force himself on Robin, whether Robin wants it or not.
Godspeed your way.
Our way lies together with the speed of Allah.
What?
You have saved my life, Christian. I will stay with you until I have saved yours. That is my vow.
Thanks, but I go to England. I relieve you of your obligation.
Only Allah can do that.
What if I say no?
You have no choice.
So, Robin's getting diversity whether he wants it or not. Of course, Robin has no choice. He has to leave because, of course, all of the European Christians are in chains. Funny how that works out. Anyway, back to the home front. And we see Blessed. That's Brian Blessed. And it's the best part of the movie. Of course, some bizarre cult, which is dressed up sort of like the Klan. I wonder if that's a mere coincidence. And Blessed is suitably blessed and bombastic. And
You! And King Richard!
and some weird energy. The wholesome fun of the Errol Flynn version is replaced with not a corrupt sheriff or a bombastic sheriff or just a good old-fashioned bad guy sheriff, but a bizarre, twisted, satanic sheriff who is a big-time simp for Marion and who has some weird shit with his mom, which we will get into later on. Now, back to that force of diversity. We have here Robin making out with English soil, which is understandable. He's been away from home for a long time.
I'm home! I'm home!
So then people can be tied to their soil and to their home. That's not a construct. Interesting. So Azeem, of course, Robin tries to be generous and say, hey, I appreciate everything you've done, but, now you can go home and, oh, well, I couldn't possibly do that, and fails to take the hint and is willing to beat the shit out of people if they try to get him to go back to where he belongs.
No man controls my destiny. especially not one who attacks downwind and stinks of garlic.
Ah, yes, those Europeans have so much to learn about culture and civilization from those Muslims. And of course, the inept Europeans wouldn't be able to escape from the Turkish prison without Azeem's help. We'll show the cruelty of the Muslims, but then we'll sort of have to counterbalance it with one of them being really amazing. And no one can tell him that he doesn't belong in England, especially not these stinky Europeans. And of course, Robin just thinks that's great.
Then your maid's lost her resolve.
Them with plants.
Then your maid's lost her resolve to me thanks to this little plant.
Mrs. Always talking about.
In my country, we talk to our women. We do not drug them with plants.
And of course, the Muslim is there to lecture the European on the finer aspects of romance. And of course, that's why Azeem was on the chopping block, because he is such a ladies' man.
Worth dying for.
The woman was, anyway. And of course, then we have a thing of a poor boy being chased by hounds for the crime of being poor, and of course, this, the brutal treatment of peasants at the hands of lords, completely ahistorical if you actually look at the relationship between serf and master in medieval history. This is a total inversion, or maybe I should say subversion, but we'll go along from that. And of course, Robin's there to take the side of the underdog, and what are you doing going after this kid for stealing deer? How dare you? And proceeds to take names and kick ass, and of course, Azeem, the eternal hero, can't be bothered because it's praying time. And of course, Robin could die, but that's a source of humor for the film.
You whine like a mule.
Save my life, then leave me to be butchered?
And of course, his whole justification for I have to come to Europe and everything was, you have to let me in because it's something I want to do for you. You see, diversity enriches us. It's for our good that these people are here. And of course, why are they here? Well, it's because they want to fulfill a job. They want to work. Only they don't. They're there to enrich us. Azeem is here to work for us, and then he doesn't. They come here because they want to bring something to our society, and then they take away from it and destroy it. But if we say something about it, then that just means that we're bitter or obnoxious and are in denial of reality.
You whine like a mule. You're still alive.
There isn't a problem. What's the matter with you? It's in your head. You need to grow up.
Interesting place, this. England.
And after they've just been brutalized in a Turkish prison, and Azeem just couldn't wait to leave and to force himself on England, he's now explaining to Robin how England isn't a very just society. And of course, all of the fun and joy of the earlier versions is completely gone. The sheriff is, evil, degenerate, sexual pervert, and so on and so forth. Blah, blah, blah. Robin's dad dies, or I should say is killed, for not wanting to go along with the satanic cult, and they blame it on him, and their old servant is blinded, and so what's Robin going to do now? Well, this is as good a time as any to explain that it was a mistake for him to leave his dad for the evil war of expansion to force Christianity on the Muslims.
You should go home.
Question.
You should go home.
Heads.
Called the Crusades a foolish quest. Said it was vanity to force them into our religion.
Is that what happened? Yeah, it wasn't like, constant raids by Muslims and persecutions of Christians in Europe and in the Holy Land that had been going on for centuries that they were finally able to muster up a response to. It was cultural imperialism from the Westerners. And Robin's father told him what a mistake it was to go. Sounds like a great dad. We've got weird incestual relationship with his satanic mom, the sheriff, who's reading bizarre symbols, and of course, not only is she probably having sex with her son and involved in some sort of bizarre blood practice and everything, but she's also, of course, racist.
What's wrong?
I have seen death. The painted man. He haunts my dreams, adorned with strange foreign markings.
Loxley's companion.
These people are so backward. Thank God Azeem is here. Of course, looking for some lodgings, and we have to get another thing in of Azeem standing up to the racists.
Were it not for their ungodly ways. A curse on Moors and Saracens. Were it not for their ungodly ways, Master Robin would never have left.
And Azeem just flashes this poor blinded man a look like, "What are you talking about?" As if he doesn't know. When he was in a fucking Turkish prison, that he basically cajoled his way and forced his way under the pretense of, I have an obligation to help you, so that he could get out of there. So, it's got some gall on him. And of course, we have some early predictive programming here, where Robin is basically turned away and forced out from what is his old Squeeze's abode, Marion. Apparently she isn't there. So he gets kicked out, or they try to kick him out, and he starts fighting with their palace guard, or whatever the case might be, and gets whammed in the nads. And of course, this man who has been overseas, been to war, of the warrior class of the nobility, is overpowered by strong women. Now, it's not as ridiculous as implausible as if they did it in this day and age, where she's just beating the shit out of a bunch of guys who are 10 times her strength. She fights dirty the way a woman was. She gets him right in the nads, when it takes him not by surprise. When it takes him by surprise, I should say.
Hello, Marion.
It's always funny when guys get kicked in the balls. And of course, after all the toil and fighting and suffering overseas, combating with and being tortured by those wonderful enlightened Muslims who, for a brief moment in time, surpassed Europe before it really started to advance materially and then quickly fell apart and collapsed and didn't have anything like the autonomy or the communitarian ethic or the balance between noble and lord and crown and people, and so did not have a sustainable foundation and went straight back into barbarism. And what they did learn, they borrowed almost exclusively from older European peoples whose knowledge had passed away in Europe. But be that as it may, and so they went through all that, and of course, so Marion is overjoyed to see them, right? Oh, no, the solemn vow he made to Marion's brother, to look after her and everything like that. No, he probably just left him there to die. So, the gratitude of a woman who appreciates the sacrifice that men make to protect her. Yeah. Of course, this is all justified because Robin used to kind of be a bully when he was a kid. So that's the pretext for a guy being pushed around on screen. And then we have an example of Muslims so advanced, Europeans so dumb, when, Robin doesn't really have any understanding of what sort of these proto-binoculars that...
Look. Look. Never take Jerusalem. How did your uneducated kind ever take Jerusalem?
Yes, indeed. You gotta admire it. Borrow everything from someone else's history and culture and civilization, and then mock them for being stupid. But of course, this is how history is taught to people. A year before this, Kevin Costner was in a movie where the brutal Indians who killed off other Indians to acquire everything they have are portrayed as noble, and people who were far less brutal and far less savage in their behavior, who had their families mutilated, skinned alive, are portrayed as ruthless perpetrators, and the former portrayed as innocent victims. So this is the sort of, the subversion of the history, These are not recent films. This goes back a long time, 30 years. Anyway, big chase scene. Marion at least doesn't rat him out, so... And again, the backwards superstitious nature of the Europeans works to their advantage, because they think the forest is haunted by evil spirits, and so Robin and Azeem and Duncan evade their capture.
Come on, damn you! There are only 3 of them!
It's not the men we fear, sir. It's the evil spirits.
Robin up the...
In a way, it reminds me of what we're sold in terms of the history of the Wild West. The history of the West is this wild and lawless and violent and brutal place is fairly ahistorical and is meant to give us a sort of understanding of our history as something that needed to be put in the past, and we needed to move toward, greater progress and everything like that. They used to romanticize it, and celebrate it more, but it was still portrayed in that way, and then later it was deconstructed as what, horrible and brutal origins we have, and, what is in our past. In much the same way it is done with the Middle Ages. When in a lot of ways, the earlier and more idyllic films were actually more accurate. And, in contrast, the way Marion is portrayed is, um, you know, uh, you know, a bit, in the early Errol Flynn film, a bit full of herself, but ultimately deferential to the patriarchy. Made the butt of the jokes. Whereas in this film, Marion always gets the better of Robin. It's about humiliating him as a man, and how forthright and strong-willed she is. And we have the crossing of the river, the encounter with the merry men, and of course the fight between Little John. And then, this is not a political point here, but I mean, whether we're talking Chaucer or the Richard Green series or the Errol Flynn film, the idea of Robin winning the staff conflict with Little John is just downright sacrilegious. It's supposed to be, it's supposed to be Robin's ego checked. This is the one that he doesn't win. Will Scarlet was traditionally portrayed as sort of a masculine, as sort of leader figure, but he's sort of a jealous, nasty beta, sort of younger brother, if you will, in this. But there's some good comedy and some good action there. Of course, we have a little bit more, after a couple of dirty jokes and some drinking, we have some more racism again.
He's a savage.
No, I made that myself.
Has English hospitality changed so much in 6 years that a friend of mine's not welcome at this table?
He's a savage, sire.
That he is. But no more than you or I.
You see, race as a construct, we're really all the same, even though his civilization borrowed everything from us, was brutalizing our people, and brutalized him. We're really all the same. In fact, he's way more advanced. Black people invented the light bulb. Gee golly, don't you know? And of course, it's not impolitic for him to refuse a drink, because just like when he was going to let Robin die, that's what Allah told him to do. Now, Robin is allowed some masculinity in terms of being a potential leader to the men, and rebuts claims that his dad was a Satanist, because the sheriff is actually the Satanist. And Little John's like, you think we could ever be warriors? You're insane. But little does Little John know that Azeem's there to whip them into shape. And of course, one of the glues that held society together and preserved culture and civilization for centuries, the reasons that we have a lot of the writings or any of the history we have, or what brought law and order and peace and stability, which was the church, is portrayed as inherently evil and corrupt and in bed with the sheriff.
All your people, but most especially on our noble Sheriff of Nottingham. Grant him the wisdom to guide and protect our glorious city. Grant him also the strength to bring to justice the lawless men who would threaten its safety and prosperity, and the judgment to punish them. In your name, amen.
Because, you know, law and order is really, like, oppressive and stuff. Robin knows his old friend the priest is on the take. Sheriff Sims for Marion. Get another good fight scene in here. For one brief moment, Azeem actually isn't right about something.
No, to lead you.
Christian. These are
I love how he's always Christian, but he never goes up to Azeem and is like, hey, Muslim.
simple people. They are not warriors. Be careful you do not do this for your own purposes.
You forget yourself, Azeem. I do not ask for your company or counsel.
Ride a camel and fuck off. Of course, clamping down on lawlessness, you know, bad. It's, again, an ahistorical argument. Ruthless punishments for criminality, even for low-level criminality, created a more ordered society and a more disciplined society and a less violent society, and people became more intelligent as a result of it. But, you know, this is like the lords imposing harsh punishments was this great evil in the land. Of course, Will hates Robin, so he's right front and center there to blame him. I do like this part because Will is such like a beta coward, like, you know, we should just give up. And yeah, there's this great moment where he kind of calls him a pussy.
What would you have us do? Fight armored men on horseback with rocks in our bare hands?
Needs be. But with the one true weapon that escapes you, Will. Courage.
Skadoosh. He makes a speech about, you know, we can do it ourselves. Kind of a good message for now, in these days. But of course, the reason that he learned that men defending their homes knew better than invading army was because the Crusades taught him that. As if a straight line can be drawn from the Crusades to the ridiculous globalist, neoconservative subversion of the traditional Arab world with our globalist agenda today, when it can't. Now, there could have been a way to do this in an intelligent way, sort of an indictment of the Gulf War policy and the New World Order and everything that was coming in right then with Bush. But instead, it's just weapons-grade Muslim simping. And then, of course, this is where, you know, taught them the glory of the civilization. They are taught the glories of the civilization by the Muslim man. Now, whenever this goes the other way around, whenever, you know, civilization is introduced to non-Western people, it's a destructive, chaotic thing because they can't handle it. They can't handle, you the structure of Western institutions, the access to that technology, it breaks down into chaos. We've seen that time and time and again. But of course, when a non-white person does that for a white person, we see wonderful results. Now, the understood implication of that would be different peoples handle civilization differently, but ironically enough, it's being used to show how much we have to learn from the non-whites. So they're made into a well-oiled fighting machine, and the fun can begin, and all of the merrymaking and the traditional Robin Hood-y sort of stuff, rob from the rich, give to the poor, and all that. And, the sheriff's pissed, and I thought this reminded me of some of the COVID BS that they're especially having to deal with in England.
And call off Christmas.
Maybe that's where Bojo got the idea. Okay. This is just some more stupid European smart Muslim. Of course, if any of this was done the other way around, of course, it would just be racist, even though that's what's true.
How many?
20.
20?
How many? 5.
I can't count anyway.
Come on.
Why scare them?
And they call me barbarian.
Mm-hmm. Yep, because you torture people, and your societies don't have a very high level of organization, and your IQ's lower. It's what you're evolved to, but yeah, any self-respecting European would call you a barbarian. Deal with it. This portrayal of Friar Tuck is unusually drunk, even by Friar Tuck standards. Fairly good accent by the British accent by the American. There's a thing with this one where everyone talks about Kevin Costner. He's not English, but you have a lot of that. It's one of the most American casts of any Robin Hood, and I think they actually filmed it in California, but it looked a lot like England. But they have this thing where they trap him, and Friar Tuck's a drunk, doesn't want to help a bunch of outlaws and their kind of chosen prince. Takes names, kicks ass, but to no avail, because he's Friar Tuck. So they kind of have to humiliate him, and he decides to join them, basically like a good dude. And Sheriff doesn't tolerate failure, so, his cousin completely fucked up. So he kills him. Of course, it wasn't his plan, but anyway. Then we got some more strong whammon going on here.
Very well. Come and get it. Huh.
And Marion has this sort of like dykey lesbian friend who it's kind of, I don't know if they, there's been no men around, so, those, when that happens, those tendencies tend to manifest themselves. And sexuality is highly environmental for women, and I think that's clearly some of what's going on here.
You stuffed shrub, how dare you attack us?
It's my job, my lady.
What job?
And she looks at Robin's junk and, can't admit to herself that she wants him. And, this is where she's, you would think, supposed to understand that there's really an element of nobility and heroism in Robin. And she sort of seems to. But then, of course, we do have to have another moment of the man being humiliated, he distracted a young boy he's trying to teach archery to. And he's already being distracted by them, but she kind of adds another element to it and blows in his ear when he shoots. All in good fun. Of course, the friar, he wants to turn everyone else into an alcoholic.
Assumption. Let us give praise to our Maker and glory to his bounty by learning about beer.
Now, this is healthy male behavior, resource displaying, showing that he can protect her because things are getting dicey out there. She went on about how vulnerable she was and how it was Robin and her brother's fault, with all the lands being seized by the lords, which, was a difficult problem. That's part of why Magna Carta existed, the power of king and lords and, restrictions on the behavior of lords so that they were accountable to the people below them, which people forget that was part of Magna Carta too. Now, in her defense, she instantly feels sort of bad about being so cynical about Robin's motives as to why he'd acquired all this treasure. But then this happens.
We have a rule here, you know. Once someone has seen the way to our camp, that person cannot leave. There's too many lives at stake.
That's why Sarah and I asked to be blindfolded.
That's a cold slap in the groin. But Marion's gonna Marion. And we get some more of this.
Did God? Salam, little one.
Did God paint you?
Did God paint me? For certain.
Why?
Because Allah loves wondrous variety.
That's right. Diversity is our strength. Now, pointing out the reality of that's bad, but just saying it's good in and of itself, that's okay. And things actually get real, Marion Robbie opens up about his feelings, which is not what any actual woman actually wants ever. And then gives us the whole story of some mysterious brother by marriage. That'll play in later on. And Marion talks like some character from Jane Austen. And then, what do you know, Little John's wife is in labor. And of course, they're all backwards cavemen and have no clue what to do because, babies aren't born in Europe. And, Azeem knows exactly what to do, of course. He's seen it with horses, and of course, the backward, primitive, not only just ignorance of the Europeans, but downright bigotry and racism manifests itself again. And of course, it's those damn pious types who ruining everything.
She will certainly. It cannot be born without help.
He is a devil's seed sent to lead us astray. Don't listen to him, he will kill her.
If you do not listen to
And of course, everything turns out to be okay. And at one point, Robin literally says to him, "You truly are the Great One." That's, of course, a reference to that's what his name means. So, stroking his ego yet again. Ultra racial simping. And then, of course, Friar Tuck realizes how much he has to learn and decides, let's get drunk with the foreigner.
Today the Lord has taught me a fine lesson, that though I may think I am godly, I know I am not worldly. Please, please. Come, my barbarian friend.
Of course, Azeem, because this is 30 years ago, does not instantly get outraged and punch Friar Tuck in the face for still calling him a barbarian. Of course, that would be tit for tat, because Azeem is always going on about how backward they are. And of course, the younger brother jealousy and mate selection manifests itself here when he asks Marion for a dance, and she turns him down. Will Scarlet, that is. And I have heard of, I don't know if the original Chaucer was this, but I have heard of various versions of the story where it's sort of a Lancelot, Arthur, Guinevere situation where Will Scarlet and Robin are both sort of in a love triangle with Marion. One's where they're actually related or not. That I don't know about. You have sort of the classic, sort of with the lighting and everything, moment of, where she actually kind of has her I love patriarchy moment. She goes off in the fog with some music. It's a pretty good scene. And the sharp contrast to some weird, more blood spit stuff with the pedophile witch mom of Nottingham. And basically says hire some mercenaries if you want to quell this rebellion. And of course, Marion entrusts the bishop, who of course stabs her in the back because church evil. And the message to Robin she entrusted him with, he uses to betray her to the sheriff as an excuse to confiscate all her land and take all of her people prisoner. Duncan, the old dying blind man, makes his way to Robin to warn him, but by then they're practically on top of him, and you got a real big-ass battle, which is kind of bittersweet. They lose a lot of people, and a lot of people get taken prisoner, but Robin sort of emerges, and there's sort of like almost like he's a resurrected saintly figure in a moment there, where it's sort of Azeem in awe of Robin for a change of pace. But now they're down a lot of men, and the sheriff's taken Marion and is going to marry her. And how are they ever going to stop him when most of their guys are prisoner and a lot of them are going to be executed anyway? So, the odds are against them. And then Alan Rickman, who, it's a weird tone that the film strikes because it's much more darker and serious than you usually see Robin Hood portrayed as. and yet Alan Rickman is more over the top comedic than anybody else, and so it's sort of like, I mean, there were comedic elements to the sheriff before, it's sort of his sneakiness, he tended to be cowardly, but it was sort of in a restrained way, and so it actually made it a little more sensible and believable, and made the drama come through because the drama and the comedy weren't both so over the top and extended by being both really really dark and really really goofy at the same time. Alan Wheatley is a little bit cowardly, a little bit snivelly, a little bit dark, um, and has a balanced approach where there's some comedy with Robin and there's some darkness, but it's very restrained. And to me, Alan Wheatley will always be the sheriff. But Rickman definitely has his moments, and the bishop tries to convince Marion that the best way to keep herself safe and to avoid less people being killed or chaos throughout the land is if she marries the sheriff. And so that just kind of sends her into, mental instability, and the neurotic feminine element comes out, and she has like a total breakdown. And Azeem reassures Robin that, your heart was in the right place. And then, is Will a traitor or isn't he? And then we have the whole, Dad loved you more than me, just basically some of the gayest shit that's ever been caught on film. And now they're back in it, and of course, who's gonna save the day for them? You guessed it, Azeem, the super Muslim.
The mystery is in the black powder.
Which, of course, they don't know about. And so, and then here we go. We got strong whammon again.
Hi.
You should be.
Stay with me, Mother.
You gonna bleeding crack, girl? You get hurt.
I've given birth to 8 babies. Don't you talk to me about getting hurt, you big ox. Anyway,
That's right. All of the toil and sacrifice and blood, and many of them dying without reproducing because women are the logjam in reproduction, so that they can have safety and security, so that they can have children and give birth and be nourished because they're weak and vulnerable. And so men had to go out and toil. That's nothing compared to them having give birth. You ignorant, stupid man. I wanna fight and die and be a soldier just like the rest of you, because that's what women really enjoy. And there's been no devastating consequences from the military for that. Now, it's not nearly as bad as the stuff we get now, but I mean the seeds are there.
I'm not just gonna sit here and let one of them die, am I?
You should be bloody well minding the other 7.
Base Little John. Of course, Robin overrules him. Seems to have this obsession with rubbing manure on himself when he plays his alter ego of a poor blind man. And we might be just about wrapped up here. Some good action here in this last scene. Oh yeah, we have And who do we have, of course, to give us the speech to explain to Europeans what freedom means, what they're fighting for, what they in their own lands know is their birthright and belongs to them? Who would know better than the people who are from that land, who have lived in that land for generations, who know what it means to live there, to belong to it, and to fight for it, and to know what's at stake, and to know who they are and what they are? Well, it's the guy from thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of miles away, of course. He knows better than them what's really going on, what's at stake. He'll explain what their identity as Englishmen means to them. Of course.
I fight with Robin Hood. I fight against a tyrant who holds you under his boot. If you would be free men, then you must fight. Join us now. Join Robin Hood. Freedom! Come on now! Come on!
There you go. The Muslim really understood what it means to be an Englishman. And then this is just completely ridiculous.
Fuck me, he cleared it.
Yeah, that's exactly the way they talked 900 years ago. Yeah. Anyway. Then we have a ridiculous over-the-top thing where the sheriff has to forcibly copulate with Marion and marry her right away to fulfill his creepy mom's prophecy. And it gets a little over the top. And then, of course, the racist mom gets what's coming to her. So it's basically, law, order, hierarchy, nobility, religion, putting your own tribe first. A lot of things are problematized here. And sort of have a Protestant spirit here from Friar Tuck.
I'll help you pack for your journey. Here's 30 pieces of silver to pay the devil on your way to hell.
And then Scottish King Richard, kind of a nice touch at the end here. Probably would have been a more interesting movie if Connery had been in more of it.
I'm allowed to give the bride away. You look radiant, cousin.
So, not nearly as over the top with the strong women stuff as, or the Muslim love as the 2012 Robin Hood with Russell Crowe. Probably not as good visually. Russell's probably a better Robin Hood than Costner. And this new thing, which is over the top ridiculous, I don't even know, but there's definitely some things that are a tad askew. It was a film in my childhood. I actually remember ironically pushing really hard to watch it, and my parents rightfully sort of understood that it was kind of a dark and a violent take for Robin Hood, and I think sometimes kids should watch dark and violent things if they're good, but I had to push hard for that movie. and then they became converts, and now I'm more of a my parents. Now I'm more of a Prince of Thieves skeptic. But anyway, this has been fun and interesting for me. Wow, almost a whole hour. I hope it has been for you guys. And take care, and I'll see you again soon.